It was a cold and rainy evening when he finished work and started driving home. The streets were wet, and the lights from the cars reflected on the puddles, creating little rivers of light along the asphalt. He had been working late all week and his body felt tired. His thoughts were mostly about reaching home, having a warm meal, and resting. As he drove past the bus stop near the corner, something unusual caught his eye. A small figure was struggling to push a wheelchair through the puddles. He slowed down, squinting through the rain. The girl looked young, probably in her late teens. Her clothes were soaked and she had a thin blanket over her shoulders. Her face was pale and she looked exhausted, trying to manage the chair by herself. Something about her fragile yet determined stance pulled at his heart. He stopped the car and rolled down the window slightly. "Are you okay?" he called softly. The girl looked up, startled, her eyes wide with caution. She hesitated, as if unsure whether to trust him. The rain dripped from her hair and onto her face, making her shiver. I'm waiting for someone," she whispered, her voice barely audible. He could see the sadness in her eyes and the loneliness in the way she held herself. It was clear that she was alone and the night was getting colder by the minute. He stepped closer but kept a respectful distance. "The rain is heavy. You shouldn't stay out here like this. Can I help you?" he asked gently. The girl looked around, biting her lip, clearly debating whether she could trust a stranger. He didn't push. He simply waited, giving her time to make her own choice. Finally, after what felt like minutes but were probably only seconds, she nodded slightly. He smiled reassuringly and reached into the car. "Come sit in my car. You'll get warm and I can help you figure out where to go next." Slowly, she wheeled herself closer, her movements careful but hesitant. The car door opened and he helped her lift the wheelchair slightly so she could sit in the seat safely. He handed her a towel from his glove compartment to dry herself, and she gratefully accepted it, her hands shaking slightly. He could see the weariness in her eyes and the thinness of her arms. She looked like someone who hadn't eaten properly in days. He decided he needed to do more than just give her a ride. He wanted to understand her story and help in a meaningful way. As they drove, the girl remained quiet at first. He didn't ask too many questions, sensing that she needed space to feel safe. The rain continued to pour, tapping lightly on the roof of the car. After a few minutes, she spoke softly. "I live alone now. My parents, they can't take care of me anymore," she said, her voice tinged with pain. He nodded, keeping his eyes on the road but listening closely. "It's hard for me to get around and sometimes no one comes for me. I try, but it's not easy." Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of years of struggle and abandonment. He felt a strong urge to comfort her, to make her feel safe for at least this moment. He parked the car near a small cafe that was still open. "Let's have some tea and warm up," he suggested. She hesitated again, but eventually agreed. They went inside and the smell of hot food and coffee filled the air. He ordered something simple for her, a warm drink and a light snack. She sipped slowly, her hands trembling slightly as they held the cup. He watched quietly, not wanting to make her uncomfortable but ready to talk if she wanted. After a few moments, she began to open up, sharing small details about her life. She told him how difficult it was to navigate the city in a wheelchair, how people often ignored her or treated her differently. She talked about waiting at bus stops for hours, hoping someone would help her, and how sometimes no one did. He listened with patience, nodding occasionally, never interrupting. He understood that she needed someone to hear her story without judgment. She talked about her dreams, too, about wanting to learn more, to see more of the world, even if it seemed impossible at times. Her hope was quiet, almost hidden behind the layers of hardship, but it was there. He encouraged her gently, telling her that her dreams were valid and that there were ways to reach them, even if the path was difficult. She looked at him, a small flicker of trust appearing in her eyes. It was the first time in a long while that she felt someone was genuinely listening, not pitying her, but seeing her as a person with strength and courage. After spending some time in the cafe, the rain had lessened, but the streets were still slippery. He knew he couldn't leave her out in the cold again. "Would you like to come with me to my home for now? You can rest, have a proper meal, and stay dry. We can figure out the next steps tomorrow," he offered. She looked at him, uncertainty flickering across her face. She had been let down by people before, but something about his calm voice and kind eyes made her believe him just enough. She nodded slowly, agreeing to trust him for now. Back at his apartment, he helped her inside carefully. The place was small but warm, filled with the soft hum of life that made it feel cozy. He showed her where she could sit comfortably and brought her a blanket to dry off and warm up. She sank into the chair, exhausted but relieved. He prepared a simple meal for her, making sure she had something warm and nutritious. She ate quietly, still cautious but starting to feel a sense of security. He talked lightly about everyday things, keeping the conversation normal and friendly, not overwhelming her with too many questions at once. She began to relax, realizing she was not in danger and that someone genuinely cared for her well-being. After the meal, he helped her settle into a temporary spot where she could rest. He didn't push her to talk more, knowing she needed to process the day's events. Instead, he made sure she had water, a warm blanket, and a comfortable place to sit. She looked around the apartment, noticing the little touches of care and thoughtfulness. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of safety. The fear and uncertainty that had followed her for years seemed to ease, even if just a little. He sat nearby, reading quietly while keeping an eye on her, ready to help if she needed anything. Occasionally, they exchanged small smiles or brief words, building a subtle but meaningful connection. She began to feel that she wasn't completely alone anymore, that there was someone who would not abandon her or judge her for her situation. It was a small step but an important one. Trust, once fragile, was starting to form. Throughout the evening, he reflected on how unexpected encounters sometimes change lives. He had only intended to help a girl struggling in the rain, but he realized that he could offer much more than a ride. He could provide safety, support, and hope. And perhaps in doing so, he could also find a meaningful connection in his own life. Both of them, in different ways, had been navigating life's challenges alone, and now, by chance, their paths had crossed. By the time she finally rested, the rain had stopped completely, and the night outside was calm. Inside there was warmth, not just from the apartment, but from the small growing trust between them. She had no idea what the future would hold, but for now she felt secure, and he knew that this was just the beginning of a journey, one where compassion and kindness could make a real difference. They both drifted into a quiet, reflective silence, each feeling a little lighter, a little less alone than before. The night had brought them together, and though it was just the start, it was a start that promised hope and understanding in ways neither of them could have anticipated. The next morning, the sun peeked through the clouds, casting a gentle light across the apartment. The girl woke up slowly, blinking against the brightness. The warmth of the apartment and the quiet hum of life made her feel safer than she had in a long time. She moved a little in her wheelchair, feeling the comfort of the small space that was now hers for the moment. The single dad had already prepared a simple breakfast, toast, eggs, and a cup of warm tea. He placed it on the table nearby, smiling softly as he watched her take in the surroundings. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say or how to act. After a pause, she whispered, "Thank you." The words were quiet but filled with a sense of relief and gratitude. As she ate, he tried to keep the conversation light and normal. He asked about small everyday things, avoiding anything that might make her uncomfortable. She spoke softly, telling him a little about her routines, her small dreams, and the difficulties she faced every day. Her voice carried a mix of sadness and resilience, and he listened carefully, knowing that she needed someone to truly hear her. He didn't judge, didn't interrupt, only nodded and encouraged her gently. In her eyes, he could see the spark of hope that had been buried under years of struggle and neglect. After breakfast, he helped her get ready to move around a little. He wanted her to feel independent, even if just in small ways, so he guided her wheelchair to the living area where she could stretch and move. He had some books and a few board games on a shelf nearby and suggested they spend some time together, doing something simple and relaxing. She hesitated at first, unsure how to engage, but he patiently explained the rules and offered encouragement. Slowly, she started to laugh, a light, soft sound that filled the apartment with a warmth neither of them had noticed before. The dad felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that even these small moments of joy were important for her confidence and emotional well-being. Later, he suggested they step outside briefly to enjoy the fresh air. He carefully assisted her down the small ramp he had set up at the entrance, ensuring she could move safely and comfortably. The neighborhood was quiet, with only a few people walking by. She looked around, taking in the sights and sounds, a small smile forming on her face. For someone who had rarely felt safe outside, this moment felt liberating. He walked alongside her, keeping a watchful eye, ready to help if needed, but also giving her space to enjoy the movement and scenery. She told him stories about her favorite places, the ones she wished she could visit again, and he listened, imagining her dreams alongside her. After returning inside, he realized that she would need more than just temporary care. Her life had been unstable for too long, and she deserved a safe, consistent environment. He decided to help her get access to some basic resources. Together, they researched local support services, community programs, and organizations that assisted people with disabilities. The girl was hesitant at first, unsure if she could rely on these programs, but he reassured her, explaining how they could provide assistance with medical needs, education, and mobility aids. He also helped her fill out simple forms, patiently guiding her through each step. She felt a mix of hope and anxiety, unsure if the world could truly offer her support after so many disappointments. As the day went on, he shared more about his own life, talking about the challenges he faced as a single parent and the lessons he had learned. He didn't try to overshadow her experiences, but instead created a space for mutual understanding. They laughed at small jokes, shared stories of past mistakes, and discussed dreams for the future. This simple exchange of human connection made the girl feel valued, not as someone in need, but as a person capable of hope and resilience. She began to realize that trust was possible, that people could genuinely care without expecting anything in return. The afternoon brought a small challenge when she needed to attend a medical appointment. He carefully assisted her into the car, ensuring the wheelchair was secure, and drove her to the clinic. The appointment itself was simple, a routine checkup, but it meant a lot to her. She felt seen by professionals who acknowledged her needs, and he stayed nearby, supporting her through each step. Afterward, they stopped at a small park nearby. He encouraged her to enjoy the surroundings, the sound of birds and the warmth of the sun. She laughed softly, a sound he had begun to cherish, as she shared small memories from her past, both happy and sad. Each story helped him understand her better, deepening the bond between them. Returning home, he prepared a light dinner while she relaxed. They spoke about practical matters like arranging for longer-term support, setting goals for the coming weeks, and creating routines that could help her regain a sense of normalcy. He was careful to involve her in each decision, reinforcing that her voice mattered and that she had control over her life choices. She appreciated this approach, feeling respected and heard for the first time in years. She slowly began to feel a sense of empowerment, realizing that her circumstances could change, even if the steps were small and gradual. As evening approached, they settled into the living area. He had set up a small corner with blankets and cushions where she could feel comfortable. He brought a book to read aloud, something light and entertaining. She listened, sometimes joining in, asking questions and sharing thoughts. The simple activity created a sense of normalcy and companionship. It was a routine they both enjoyed, a quiet moment where life felt steady and kind. She realized that she could begin to trust again, that not everyone would leave her or treat her as less than capable. His patience, consistency, and care were teaching her that small, genuine acts of kindness could transform life. The night grew quiet, and she felt a growing sense of security. She had slept poorly for years, worrying about where she would go, who would help her, and how she could survive day to day. For the first time, she felt safe enough to relax, to imagine a future without constant fear. He watched quietly as she settled, feeling a quiet pride in seeing her slowly regain hope and confidence. He understood that this journey would take time, patience, and consistent care, but he was committed. The trust they were building now could become the foundation for a life filled with dignity, support, and possibility. Throughout the day, they had shared more than just practical care. They had shared stories, laughter, and moments of vulnerability. Each interaction had deepened the trust between them, allowing the girl to feel a sense of belonging and acceptance. He had learned about her dreams, her fears, and her resilience, while she had discovered that there were people willing to care for her without expecting anything in return. The day had been a mixture of simple joys, careful guidance, and gentle encouragement, all designed to help her regain confidence and stability. As the night settled in, he helped her prepare for bed. He didn't rush, making sure she felt comfortable and secure. He left a small light on, knowing that darkness had often made her feel alone and scared. She looked around the apartment, noticing the little details that showed care and thoughtfulness. A warm blanket, a cozy corner, a quiet presence. These were simple things, yet they carried immense meaning. She realized that trust, once broken so many times, could slowly be rebuilt with patience, kindness, and consistency. Before sleeping, she whispered softly, "Thank you for today." He smiled, understanding that this was more than just politeness. It was gratitude from someone who had felt abandoned and ignored for too long. He replied gently, "You don't need to thank me. You deserve to feel safe and cared for." The words were simple, but they carried a promise of support, of companionship, and of hope. They both understood that this was just the beginning of a journey, one that would require patience, effort, and mutual trust. But for the first time, the girl felt that she could take steps forward without fear, and he felt that he could make a meaningful difference in her life. The night ended with a quiet stillness, both of them reflecting on the day. She had begun to see the possibility of a better life, and he had witnessed the resilience and courage of someone who had endured so much. They had formed a connection based on trust, respect, and genuine care, a bond that would become the foundation for the next steps in her journey. The day had been filled with small victories, trust earned, fears eased, and hope rekindled. And as they both drifted into sleep, there was a shared understanding that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new moments of growth, and the continued building of a life filled with compassion and support. The next morning began quietly. Sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, giving the small apartment a warm glow. The girl stirred in her wheelchair, stretching slightly as she woke. She felt a strange sense of comfort, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. The single dad was already moving around the kitchen, preparing breakfast. The smell of toasted bread and tea filled the room. He looked up and smiled warmly as she watched him, still adjusting to the new sense of safety she felt in this place. They ate breakfast together in silence for a few moments. The girl picked at her food, still cautious but feeling slightly more relaxed. He didn't rush her, allowing her the space to eat at her own pace. After breakfast, he suggested they go over some plans for the day. He wanted her to feel in control and involved, rather than just a passive recipient of care. She listened carefully as he explained the idea of establishing a simple routine, including meals, rest, and small activities that could bring joy and a sense of normalcy. She nodded slowly, appreciating the structure and the fact that her opinion mattered in making decisions. After breakfast, he helped her move to the living area where they could spend some time together. He had set up a few things to make the space comfortable: a soft blanket over the couch, a few books within easy reach, and a small corner with cushions where she could relax. He suggested reading a story together, something light and entertaining. As he read, she occasionally asked questions, pointing out interesting things or commenting softly on the story. Her laughter, soft and genuine, echoed through the apartment, and he felt a warm sense of satisfaction seeing her slowly regain joy. Later, he helped her prepare to go outside. The day was mild, and he wanted her to enjoy some fresh air. Carefully, they navigated the ramp to the small garden area outside. She took in the sights and sounds, the smell of flowers, the gentle breeze, and the distant sounds of people passing by. She smiled faintly, a rare sight these days. They spent some time just enjoying the moment, talking lightly about things they noticed, like the colors of the flowers and the birds that came nearby. He encouraged her to share memories or stories about places she wished she could visit, listening with interest and asking gentle questions. When they returned inside, he suggested they work on a small project together. He had noticed her interest in books and learning, so he brought out some simple educational materials. They began with light reading exercises, puzzles, and word games. She was hesitant at first, unsure of her own abilities, but he encouraged her gently, celebrating small victories and offering support without criticism. With each task she completed, her confidence grew. He could see a spark of determination in her eyes that hadn't been there before, a willingness to try even when it was challenging. As the afternoon approached, he reminded her of an appointment with a social worker at a nearby community center. He explained that the social worker could provide information and support for her situation, helping with resources for mobility aids, medical care, and education. She was nervous, unsure of what to expect, but he reassured her that he would be there every step of the way. Together, They got into the car, making sure the wheelchair was secure, and drove to the center. The social worker greeted them warmly, taking the time to listen to her story and understand her needs. She began to feel for the first time that there were people willing to help and not just turn her away. After the meeting, they walked around a nearby park. He encouraged her to enjoy the sunshine and the sounds of the city. She pointed out small things she had never noticed before: the pattern of the paving stones, the movement of leaves in the wind, the way the sunlight made shadows dance. He listened attentively, engaging in conversation and making her feel that her observations were important. The simple act of noticing and discussing these small details gave her a sense of presence and belonging that she had not experienced in years. Back at the apartment, he prepared a simple dinner while she relaxed in her corner. They discussed practical matters like scheduling appointments, organizing her daily routine, and planning small goals for the coming week. He wanted her to feel empowered, not overwhelmed, and to understand that she had control over her life. She appreciated this approach, recognizing that her voice and choices mattered. This was a new experience for her, being included, being respected, and being supported in making decisions for her own life. After dinner, they spent time talking about her interests and dreams. She shared stories of her favorite subjects, hobbies, and things she had always wanted to learn, but hadn't had the chance to explore. He listened attentively, asking questions and offering encouragement. This conversation helped her realize that her abilities and passions mattered, that she could pursue her interests despite the challenges she faced. The discussion was filled with small moments of laughter, curiosity, and learning, creating an atmosphere of hope and possibility. As night approached, he guided her to a comfortable corner with blankets and cushions where she could relax. He suggested reading a story together, something light and entertaining, and she agreed. The story brought moments of joy and imagination, and they shared small conversations about the characters and events. She began to feel a sense of normalcy, enjoying the simple pleasures of life and companionship. The consistent presence and support of someone who genuinely cared made her feel valued and respected, slowly rebuilding her trust in people. Throughout the evening, he reflected on how small, thoughtful actions could make a significant difference. From helping her with daily routines to listening to her stories, each step contributed to her sense of security and well-being. She, in turn, began to understand that she could rely on someone without fear of abandonment. The bond between them was growing stronger, built on trust, patience, and genuine care. Before bedtime, he helped her prepare for rest, making sure she was comfortable and had everything she needed. He left a small light on, understanding that darkness could be unsettling for her. She looked around the apartment, noticing the small details that conveyed care and consideration. The warmth of the space, the attention to her needs, and the quiet presence of someone who genuinely cared gave her a sense of security that she hadn't felt in years. She whispered softly, "Thank you for today." He replied with a gentle smile, "You don't need to thank me. You deserve to feel safe and cared for." The words carried a promise of support, companionship, and hope. Both understood that this was just the beginning of a longer journey. The girl had begun to regain confidence and hope, and he was committed to helping her build a stable and fulfilling life. The day had been filled with small victories, trust built, fears eased, and hope rekindled. As they both settled into sleep, there was a quiet understanding that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities for growth, connection, and support. The routine they established was becoming a source of comfort and stability. She felt a growing sense of belonging, and he witnessed firsthand the resilience and courage that she possessed. The simple acts of care, attention, and listening were transforming her outlook on life. Each day brought small but meaningful progress, helping her feel empowered and valued. Together, they were creating a safe environment where trust and support could flourish. Throughout the week, they continued these routines, gradually introducing new activities that fostered her independence and confidence. He helped her explore hobbies, practice basic life skills, and navigate small challenges that had previously seemed insurmountable. Each success, no matter how small, reinforced her sense of capability and worth. She began to look forward to their shared moments, realizing that life could offer more than struggle and hardship. She had someone to rely on, someone who believed in her and supported her growth. The bond between them deepened, built on shared experiences, patience, and compassion. The girl started to imagine a future where she could thrive, supported by genuine care and understanding. Even simple routines like preparing meals together, reading stories, or going for short walks became meaningful experiences. He made sure to include her in decisions, empowering her to take ownership of her day-to-day life. She began to feel a sense of control and agency, a feeling she had not experienced in years. These small victories built upon each other, creating a foundation of trust, stability, and hope. The girl was learning that she could rely on others without fear, and he was witnessing the remarkable resilience and strength she had developed through her struggles. As night fell again, they reflected on the day. She felt a renewed sense of hope and belonging, and he felt a deep satisfaction in seeing her progress. The trust between them had grown, and both were committed to nurturing this bond. The day had been filled with laughter, learning, and meaningful connection, reinforcing the idea that even in difficult circumstances, kindness and patience could transform lives. As they settled in for sleep, there was a shared sense of optimism, knowing that together, they could face the challenges ahead and continue building a life filled with support, care, and possibility. The morning light came gently through the windows, filling the apartment with warmth. The girl awoke feeling more comfortable than she had in a long time. The single dad was already in the kitchen, preparing a simple breakfast. The aroma of toasted bread and tea filled the space. He smiled at her as she adjusted herself in her wheelchair, feeling ready to face the day. Breakfast was quiet at first, a peaceful moment before they began the activities they had planned together. After breakfast, he suggested they spend some time outside to enjoy the fresh air. The weather was pleasant, and he wanted her to feel the freedom of being outdoors. Carefully, he assisted her down the ramp to the garden area. The sunlight warmed her face, and she looked around with a small, genuine smile. She had rarely experienced a sense of peace like this, where she could move around safely and notice the beauty in her surroundings. They walked slowly, talking about the shapes of the clouds and the patterns of sunlight through the trees. Each observation became a shared experience, building a sense of companionship and trust. Once inside, he suggested they tackle some small projects together. They worked on organizing her belongings and setting up a small area for her books and personal items. She was hesitant at first, unsure if she could manage on her own, but he encouraged her to take small steps. With gentle guidance, she arranged her things, taking pride in creating a space that felt like her own. The process gave her a sense of accomplishment and reinforced the idea that she could manage responsibilities with support and encouragement. Later, he suggested they explore educational activities. He had found some simple learning materials, including books and puzzles, and they began to work through them together. She was initially shy, doubting her abilities, but he celebrated every effort, no matter how small. Her confidence grew with each completed task, and she started to smile more, her laughter becoming a regular part of their days. These small moments of achievement helped her feel capable and valued, reminding her that she could still learn, grow, and enjoy life. In the afternoon, he reminded her of a visit to a nearby community center, where she could meet with volunteers and attend programs for people with disabilities. She was nervous, unsure of what to expect, but he reassured her that he would be there to support her. Together, they traveled to the center, where she met with a volunteer who patiently explained the available resources. She learned about programs for skill development, social interaction, and basic support services. For the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope that the world could offer her assistance, not judgment or neglect. After the visit, they stopped at a small cafe nearby. He suggested they sit and have a snack, giving her time to process the day and enjoy a peaceful moment. She took a sip of her drink and looked around, noticing small details she had never paid attention to before. The way sunlight reflected on the table, the sound of distant conversations, the smell of baked goods. He encouraged her to observe and share her thoughts, making her feel that her perspective was valued. This simple act of listening helped her feel seen and respected. Back at the apartment, he helped her settle into a comfortable spot while he prepared a light dinner. They spoke about practical matters like organizing daily routines, setting small goals, and creating strategies to manage her mobility and personal care. She appreciated being included in these discussions, realizing that her opinions and choices mattered. The act of planning together gave her a sense of control and empowerment, something she had rarely experienced before. As evening approached, they engaged in a relaxing activity together. He suggested reading a story and she agreed, enjoying the opportunity to share thoughts and observations. They laughed at funny moments in the story and discussed the characters' experiences, relating them to their own lives in small, thoughtful ways. This time of shared enjoyment strengthened their bond, creating a safe and supportive environment where she could express herself freely. Throughout the day, he remained patient and attentive, offering guidance and encouragement without being overbearing. He celebrated her achievements, reassured her during moments of doubt, and maintained a consistent presence that helped rebuild her trust. Each interaction was filled with care and understanding, reinforcing the idea that she could rely on someone without fear of abandonment or judgment. The night grew quiet, and he helped her prepare for bed, ensuring she was comfortable and had everything she needed. He left a small light on, understanding that darkness could be unsettling. She looked around the apartment, noticing the thoughtful arrangements and small touches that made the space feel safe and welcoming. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of security and belonging. The environment, combined with his steady presence, allowed her to relax and begin to imagine a future where she could thrive. Before sleep, she whispered, "Thank you for today." He responded gently, "You don't need to thank me. You deserve to feel safe and cared for." The words carried a promise, a commitment to continued support, understanding, and companionship. Both recognized that this was a step in a longer journey, one that would require patience, trust, and consistent care. Yet the day had been filled with meaningful progress, small victories and moments of joy that reminded them both of the value of human connection. In the following days, they continued to establish routines that provided stability and comfort. She began to take small steps toward independence, such as managing her personal care with guidance, participating in educational activities, and exploring the neighborhood safely. Each success, no matter how minor, reinforced her confidence and self-esteem. He continued to offer gentle support, encouraging her to try new things while respecting her pace and comfort level. Their shared moments, whether simple conversations or collaborative tasks, became opportunities for learning, growth, and emotional connection. The girl gradually began to feel a sense of belonging and empowerment. She realized that she could trust someone without fear, and that her abilities and opinions mattered. The single dad witnessed her resilience and determination, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction in supporting her journey. Together, they navigated the challenges of daily life, celebrating achievements and learning from difficulties. The bond between them grew stronger, built on mutual respect, patience, and genuine care. Even routine tasks like preparing meals, organizing belongings, or reading stories became meaningful experiences. She learned to enjoy the simple pleasures of life and to appreciate the consistent support she received. Each day reinforced the idea that small acts of kindness, patience, and attention could transform her outlook and rebuild her trust in people. The sense of safety and stability allowed her to imagine a future filled with possibilities rather than limitations. As night fell again, they reflected on the progress of the day. She felt a renewed sense of hope and belonging, while he felt a quiet pride in seeing her growth and resilience. The bond they shared was becoming a foundation for continued support, trust, and companionship. The day had been filled with meaningful interactions, laughter, learning, and small victories that contributed to her overall well-being. They both understood that tomorrow would bring new opportunities and challenges, and they were prepared to face them together. Through consistent care, guidance, and encouragement, the girl began to regain confidence and independence. She realized that she could participate actively in her own life, make decisions, and pursue her interests. The single dad continued to provide support without being controlling, fostering an environment where trust, patience, and respect guided every interaction. The journey was gradual, but each day brought meaningful progress and deepened their connection. By the end of the day, she felt a sense of security and hope that she had not experienced for years. She understood that she could rely on someone, that her voice mattered, and that her life could improve through patience, effort, and support. The day had been filled with growth, connection, and meaningful experiences, reinforcing the idea that even in challenging circumstances, trust, kindness, and consistent care could transform a life. As they prepared for sleep, There was a shared understanding that tomorrow would offer new moments of growth, connection, and possibility, continuing the journey of rebuilding her confidence, independence, and hope for the future. Morning came softly, with sunlight spilling across the apartment. The girl woke up feeling more confident and calm than she had in years. She stretched slightly, appreciating the warmth and safety that had become familiar over time. The single dad was already moving about the kitchen preparing breakfast. The simple aroma of tea and toast brought a comforting sense of normalcy. He greeted her with a gentle smile, and she responded with a small, sincere one in return. Over time, these small daily exchanges had become important, signaling trust and companionship that went beyond words. After breakfast, he suggested they plan for the day together. They went over simple goals, some learning activities, preparing meals, and a short outing to a nearby park. She listened carefully, her eyes reflecting both curiosity and a newfound sense of purpose. Unlike before, she felt involved and empowered to participate in decisions that shaped her day. The routine, which had once felt foreign and intimidating, now offered stability and comfort. She could see progress in herself, and it was encouraging. The daily structure was not just about organization. It was about regaining control of her life and slowly building confidence. Once breakfast was done, he helped her set up in a cozy corner where she could start her morning activities. He had arranged books, puzzles, and learning materials within reach, creating an inviting and accessible space. She hesitated at first, unsure if she could manage, but he encouraged her gently, reminding her that every small effort mattered. She began with simple puzzles, gradually moving to reading exercises. Each task she completed gave her a quiet sense of achievement. Her laughter and smiles grew more frequent, and he could feel her confidence expanding. These small victories were crucial in helping her realize her own capabilities. Later, he helped her prepare to go outside. The weather was pleasant, and he knew that exposure to the world beyond the apartment would be beneficial. Carefully, he guided her down the ramp and into the fresh air. The girl marveled at the small details around her, the patterns of sunlight on the ground, the gentle sway of tree branches, and the distant sounds of life in the neighborhood. They moved slowly, allowing her to take in her surroundings, and he listened attentively to her observations. This time of shared attention and curiosity deepened their bond. He was not only guiding her physically, but also helping her rebuild her connection with the world, something she had long felt separated from. After a short walk, they visited a small community center, where she participated in a program designed for people with mobility challenges. She was initially shy, but with his encouragement, she engaged in activities, met other people, and shared her experiences. The exposure helped her feel that she was not alone in her challenges, and that support existed beyond the apartment walls. The single dad observed her quietly, providing reassurance when needed and celebrating her bravery in trying new things. By the time they returned home, she seemed lighter, more optimistic, and proud of herself for stepping out and connecting with others. Back at the apartment, he prepared a light lunch while she relaxed and reflected on the morning. They discussed practical matters such as organizing her daily schedule, maintaining her health, and slowly pursuing interests that had been set aside for years. He made sure she understood that she had a voice in every decision, reinforcing her sense of control and self-worth. The conversations were thoughtful but casual, creating an environment where she could express herself freely without fear of judgment. She began to realize that her life could be guided by her own choices, supported by someone who respected her autonomy. In the afternoon, they engaged in a creative activity. He encouraged her to draw or write, allowing her to express thoughts and feelings she might have kept hidden. At first, she hesitated, unsure of her ability, but with gentle encouragement, she began to create small drawings and notes. These small acts of creativity became a release, a way for her to articulate her emotions and imagination. He admired her effort and praised her work genuinely, reinforcing that her expressions were valuable and meaningful. Over time, these moments of creative engagement became a therapeutic outlet, boosting her emotional well-being and self-confidence. Later, they focused on practical life skills. He guided her through organizing her personal items, planning meals, and managing small tasks around the apartment. The exercises were simple, but they were building blocks toward independence. She felt empowered as she learned to handle responsibilities, and he celebrated every achievement, no matter how minor. Each success reinforced her belief that she was capable of managing her life with the right support. This slow, steady process was transforming her sense of self from fragile and dependent to confident and capable. As evening approached, he suggested a quiet walk in the nearby park. She agreed, eager to enjoy the calm atmosphere and the gentle movement. The park was peaceful, filled with birdsong and the rustle of leaves. They moved slowly, taking in the environment, sharing stories, and observing small details. She spoke about her past, dreams, and hopes for the future. He listened attentively, offering reassurance and encouragement. The walk was more than exercise. It was a shared experience that strengthened their emotional connection and reinforced the idea that she was not alone in facing life's challenges. Returning home, he prepared a simple dinner while she relaxed. They shared the meal, discussing the day's highlights and small victories. She expressed gratitude not only for his help, but for the genuine companionship and understanding he offered. It was a type of support she had rarely experienced, a combination of practical assistance, emotional encouragement, and consistent presence. The day had been filled with moments that reinforced trust, self-confidence, and hope. She felt increasingly capable of navigating her life with support and guidance, while he felt fulfilled seeing her progress and resilience. After dinner, they spent time reading a story together. She asked questions, offered observations, and laughed at funny moments. The interaction was playful yet meaningful, reinforcing communication, trust, and mutual enjoyment. She realized that she could enjoy the company of another person without fear of judgment or disappointment. These moments of connection became the foundation for her growing emotional security and sense of belonging. The small, consistent acts of kindness, attention, and support were shaping her life in profound ways. As night fell, he helped her prepare for rest. He ensured she was comfortable, that her wheelchair was secure, and that she had everything she needed for a peaceful night. He left a small light on, understanding that darkness could evoke unease, and he remained nearby until she settled. She looked around the apartment, noticing the thoughtful arrangements and the stability that had been established. She felt a sense of safety, belonging, and hope, emotions she had long been deprived of. For the first time, the idea of a future beyond struggle seemed possible. She whispered softly, "Thank you for everything you've done for me." He replied gently, "You don't need to thank me. You deserve to feel safe and cared for every day." The words carried a promise and a commitment, signaling a continued presence and support that would help her navigate challenges and embrace opportunities. They both understood that this was a turning point in her life, a transition from fear and uncertainty to hope, stability, and trust. In the following days, she continued to explore her abilities and interests. She learned to participate actively in her own care, manage her daily routines, and engage in activities that brought joy and growth. Each accomplishment, no matter how small, reinforced her confidence and independence. He remained a steady presence, offering guidance, encouragement, and reassurance without taking control, allowing her to take ownership of her life. Their bond deepened, built on mutual respect, patience, and understanding. She began attending programs at the community center, meeting others who faced similar challenges and finding opportunities to learn and socialize. These experiences helped her build social skills, establish friendships, and gain access to resources that supported her independence. The combination of external support and his consistent presence created a strong foundation for her growth. She felt increasingly capable of managing her life and pursuing goals that had once seemed out of reach. Even in simple, everyday moments, reading stories, preparing meals, or taking walks, she experienced progress. She felt valued, capable, and safe. He witnessed her resilience and determination, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment in supporting her journey. Each day was filled with small victories, shared moments, and meaningful growth. Together, they were creating a life where trust, care, and companionship were central, transforming her experience from one of abandonment and fear to one of empowerment and hope. As the story reached this stage, the girl had become healthier, more confident, and independent. She had learned to trust again, to rely on others without fear, and to embrace opportunities for growth. The single dad had not only provided practical support, but had also nurtured her emotional well-being, offering companionship, understanding, and guidance. Their connection was a testament to the power of kindness, patience, and consistent care. She had found safety, stability, and the possibility of a brighter future, while he had found fulfillment in helping another person rediscover hope. The journey had been gradual, but each step had been meaningful. From the moment he first saw her struggling at the bus stop to this point, her life had transformed. Trust had been rebuilt, confidence had been restored, and hope had taken root. Their shared experiences had created a bond that was strong, compassionate, and life-changing. Together, they had navigated challenges, celebrated victories, and cultivated a sense of belonging and security that would continue to shape her life for years to come. The night ended quietly, with a sense of calm and fulfillment. She felt safe, supported, and hopeful, ready to face the future with confidence. He felt proud and content, having played a role in transforming her life through compassion, patience, and genuine care. The story concluded not with an ending, but with the continuation of a journey of growth, trust, and the lasting impact of human kindness.